Hi, this is Master Ingvar Jóhannesson from Iceland, and I want to present to you a cool game that I saw the other day. It was played on the 14th of July 2014, and it's from the Swedish Chess Championship. That's the little flag there on the right. The little flag on the right. It's the Swedish one. So, with the white pieces, D.Semcesen, and with the black pieces, the fantastic attacking player Jonny Hector. So if you're not familiar with him, look at some games, you will not be disappointed. He has a number of really cool attacking games on his resume, and he managed to add a pretty cool one here. So Hector with black, we're going to look at it from the black side. A little bit of a spoiler. d4, d5, knight f3, knight f6, c4, c6. The Slav defense, and this is nothing new in the practice of Jonny Hector. He's been playing the Slav for quite a while, and he has some cool systems in it, both equalizing systems and some active gambit type systems. Here, the most common move is knight c3, leading to main lines such as this one. We'll take c4, a4, bishop f5, etc. In this game, Daniel, with the white pieces, decided to avoid that with queen b3. And note that, as black played, it doesn't matter if you put the queen on c2 or b3. The idea for white is the same. You don't want to gambit the pawn on c4, so you want to recapture with the queen. Okay, on b3 we're lining up against the b7 pawn. I guess that's the key difference. With the pawn, with the queen on c2 in some lines, black can play g6, and then bishop f5 hitting the queen. But maybe queen b3 is more forcing in that most likely black will take on c4. And after queen c4, yeah, it doesn't matter if the queen came from c2 or b3, we have the same position. From here, Hector developed his bishop to g4. Usually in the Slav, the bishop is developed here. In this case, he put it on g4. And here, Daniel D.Semcesen played the most aggressive move, knight c3. And not really fearing any capture here on f3. I'm guessing he will take with a g-pawn and just try and get it built. Try and build the cool center here with the e4 and d4 pawn, and you have the bishop here. So, some trumps for white, but I mean, still a playable position for black, of course. But Hector went for development with knight b to d7. And now white played e4. So, to me that signals that he would have taken on f3 with a pawn, with a g-pawn, because we can transpose here. I can take on f3 now. But Hector didn't do that. He played pawn to e5. And Daniel took with the pawn. Now it's natural to ask why, what happens if we take with the knight. And in that case, black would take with his knight. He retakes and bishop e6. And this is a relatively unexplored line, but it seems like black has good activity. It's easy for white to go wrong. For instance, let's say queen e2, knight g4, we're attacking the pawn on e5. And if you get too liberal with defending it, there's a lot of activity for black, bishop c5. This square is vulnerable, so white is retreating, losing time. He's moving his queen a number of times, retreating his knight. He is breaking opening principles. Bishop b4 check. So that signals that black should be in good shape here. Queen d4 hitting the knight on c3. Here queen f3 is virtually losing after long castles, and bishop b2 is also problematic for white. Big pressure, and if you end up castling queenside, which you probably have to anyway, black has big pressure and will be able to pick up some pawns on the queenside, and has an ongoing attack and lead in development. So, I mean, knight takes e5 is an option, but white took with the pawn. okay. I think I actually accidentally clicked into some line there later in the game, but it was so quick that you didn't notice. D takes e5. Bishop takes f3, assertion took. And here, white took with a g pawn, but again, he had an option here. He could have taken on f6. In that case, black is probably sacrificing a piece like this, knight e5. And I believe he has at least a draw in the main line here. With d8, knight d4, etc. And then we take on f2, and we can go back and forth here, attack the rook on h1 with at least a draw. So, what the hell? I'm crazy with my mouse here. Sorry for that. So, he took with a pawn here. Yep, g takes f3. And now knight takes e5, hitting the queen, hitting the pawn on f3 right here. So the queen went to e2, no longer attacked and protected the pawn. Hector went on with his development, bishop c5, the most attractive square for this bishop. And white went bishop d2. Bishop e3 is also an option. And black probably takes and plays maybe g5. That's what my sources are telling me. Knight g6, etc. And black has his fair share of a play. Bishop d2 instead. And now a surprising move by black. He played knight h5. And okay, this is a natural move if white castles queenside, which he didn't. In that case, we play queen h4. And now our pieces are lining up nicely on this f4 square. We have a blockade here and a bunch of pieces on the black squares, so we want to build up a blockade on these f4 and e5 squares, and we're also threatening the pawn on f2. The problem with this move, however, is that after the natural pawn to f4, the knight on h5 is attacked by the queen, and the knight on e5 is attacked by the pawn on f4. And a quick inspection relief? No, it will reveal. It will reveal that you can't save both at the same time. The only way to do that would be to put this knight on g4 if it was protected there, but it isn't, so that's not an option. So now is a good time for you to pause the video. What the frick did Jonny Hector have in mind here? Why did he play his knight to h5 and allow this double attack here, pawn to f4? Surely he saw that. I mean, he is a grandmaster, so this was surely not a surprise to him. And well, in fact, I think this was all still opening preparation. So what did he have in mind here? He played the stunning move, queen takes d2. What the hell? I mean, this is not something... it could be hard to come up with over the board, so... I mean, if you did, congratulations, but afterwards I found that this is theory has been analyzed by various sources. But okay, king takes d2. If you take with the queen, knight f3, regaining the material, and black is probably close to winning. Instead, king takes d2. But now we only have a piece for the queen. What the hell is this, really? Okay, let's start with knight takes f4. Ah, now we see if the queen moves to e1, which I've highlighted here with the red arrow. Then we have this knight fork. Boom shakalaka. So the queen has only one square. Turns out the knights are covering all these squares rather nicely. A lot of arrows, too many actually. So queen d1, only square for the queen. But now we can play long castles, check on the king, and white has to give back one more piece. So now we have two pieces, a pawn, maybe another pawn coming, and just fantastic compensation for the queen. And it's really it's an important concept for you whenever you're sacrificing Either you're getting compensation for a queen or you're sacrificing the exchange. It's really important that you get compensation in the form of control over a color complex. Like here, black has fantastic blockade on the black squares, and he has a black squared bishop. White only has the light squared bishop, so it's hard for him to defend on the black squares. And note also that the knights on the black squares, blockading on the black squares, they're controlling light squares. So you have more board control with such pieces, and very important to have such compensation for the queen. So enough of that, of tangent ramble in the station. She takes a d5. Excuse me for that random gibberish. King c2. And here another stunning move. And yeah, which I later found in a theoretical manual, so I'm guessing he had prepared this for the game. King b8. Oh no. And surprisingly, this is the computer's first choice. We just sacrificed the queen for 2 pieces. And then we could play a quiet move such as king b8? How is this even possible? Well, it is, and he played it. So, it's clear that our compensation is on the black squares and with the fantastic blockade on the e5 and f5 squares. So, nice board control there. And also white has some problems. I mean, he still hasn't developed his knight on, well, his bishop on f1. Can't connect the rooks, and the king is a little bit shaky on c2. He started with queen b2, here in the back rank, hitting this knight here on f4. So black protected it. On the g5. Now queen c3, double attack on the bishop on c5 and the knight on e5. Here, black could have played d4. Since if you take here, there's always rook c8. And once white takes on c8, okay, we're done the exchange, but we have the compensation I talked to you about earlier with the color complex domination. So white didn't want to do that. Well, okay, he didn't play d4, he played bishop d6, but it's not something white wants anyway. Here, maybe the first, well, let's say inaccuracy for white. King b3 makes more sense here to connect the rooks, because he played king b1, and this plan takes a little bit too long. So black took on e4 now. Yeah, note that, okay, we were threatening rook c8, another point of king b8, and white had to deal with that, so that's why he moved the king, and now we can take the pawn. 2 pieces and 2 pawns now for the queen. a3, trying to get the king to a2 and connect the rooks. Knight f3, and just fantastically active pieces for black here. Bishop e5, this bishop has now been centralized and attacking a square around the white king. Queen b3 and rook d2. Attacking this vulnerable square, and this could be picked up as well. Rook b1, and now we centralize the other knight, knight to d5. And yeah, here we maybe have a cool threat. Let's say white plays a rather random move like bishop h3. Here knight c3 probably wins on the spot. King a1 and knight d4. A nice coordination by the black pieces. And if we take on c3, knight c2, something like this, then we pick up the queen. So we might as well take, but now we're up on some pawns. And pressure on b2 and f2 still. And if the queen moves like queen takes f7, there's just maiden 1 with fantastic coordination of the knights. But white didn't want any of that. Bishop a6, threatening a mate of his own on b7. Black blocked it. And now perhaps comes the mistake. Certainly, most people would prefer black here, with the pressure and black square domination. Just more fun to play. And perhaps white panicked a little bit here, and he played rook hd1. He wanted to sacrifice the bishop on a6 just to get his pieces more active and get more, activity in general. But it seems like after this, there's just no turning back for white. Now black has 3 pieces for the queen, and even though we get 1 pawn back, there's never going to be any big problems for black around this king. Let's see what happened. Rook takes f2. White played rook e1. Okay. Sorry for that. The rook is hanging, but okay, the knight is of course pinned, so white will take here. But after bishop takes b2, now if we take here, there's rook takes b2, and then we take. That's problematic. The e-pawn would be quite dangerous, so rook f1 was what white played. Black now took, and then bishop back. e7. With the not so sneaky threat of rook takes f3, king takes e5 check, and take on h8. Hector saw that, of course, and played bishop c7, rook f2, and I mean, long story short, this is just winning for black. He just needs to coordinate his pieces a little bit, and then the e-pawn is more or less deciding the game. Bishop b6. Note that this is poisoned. Queen d6 check, knight c7, a4 threatening a5, so black plays a5. And now, okay, he tried to, I mean there's no way through, black wants to play rook e8, move the pawn. So he tried to get some perpetual chances, but another good pattern for you. The knight and the king make up, I mean, the knight basically covers the king so nicely. And all the checking squares are covered by the knight, look at that. The queen can't check here, can't check here, can't check here. Where are you going to check with the queen? You have to go all the way to f5 to give a check. So nice pattern, rook e8, queen c5, rook e5. I mean, the pieces just coordinate. There's almost nothing to be done here. And, like, look at this. Okay, the rook is covering the a-pawn. It can't move. Any check here just allows the rook to e7. Still covers the pawn. Everything is covered. The knight covers this pawn. Too many pieces. They just coordinate. Knight d4. Queen f6. Knight c6 covering the rook again. And now black is ready to post the e-pawn. e2 check. King e1. And the final move of the game, knight to e6. And this knight is coming to a square like f4 from where it can check on either of these squares, and this will decide the game. Also, once we come to f4, we can also move the rook to the first rank, or if we can get it here, and then we simply win. Any check by the white queen will be easy to parry. So yeah, a cool game by Jonny Hector, and one that I enjoyed, and I hope you did so as well. I'll see you later. Bye bye.